as promised, we're going to go ahead and do this painting tutorial, and I'm going to do a Hardened Ranger here. Basically, I've just got some GW paints right here set up, cup of water, paper towel. I don't spend a whole bunch of money on paint brushes for the most part. I do have a Winsor & Newton Series 7 000 that I use for super details. Other than that, these are just from Hobby Lobby. And this is a kit from online. I think I paid like 20 bucks for a set of sable brushes, nothing crazy expensive. I highly recommend makeup brushes for dry brushing. I got this set at Walmart. It was like $8 for all of these. The makeup brushes are super soft. They're awesome for dry brushing. Don't recommend that you take your wives or your girlfriends. I've base coated, primed the model with a Xandri dust. It's a light brown. I really prefer browns. Blacks can work. They can give you some really nice contrast to start working with, but I like light browns because they're easy to cover. And for the colors that I'm using on the Night's Watch, it works great. GW primers are awesome. I highly recommend them because I don't ever have issues with even coating or coverage. They never get like a glossy coat on them. So anyway, I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't care what you use, but we're going to start with a dry brush of Ultimate Gray. We're not going to get the whole process, but you're just going to dab it off on the paper towel. The first dry brush can be pretty heavy, and you're just going to dry brush the whole model. Just trying to get the raised areas as normal for a dry brush. This is going to really help the contrast do work. Okay, so just a quick dirty dry brush. We've done the Ultimate Gray. So next we'll just go over it with a, this is just white scar. This is going to be a more focused dry brush. So you're just essentially going to be picking out the very extreme details. Again, this is just really going to help the contrast paints. So same method, you're going to really dab this brush off, but this time you're going to press even lighter when you dry brush and just really start to pick out some of the details in this white. And again, you'll do this for the whole model. Okay, the next part of this process is a little bit, it's a step that's kind of forgotten, I guess. It can be a little bit misleading with just how much time you can waste, and that's picking out your colors and kind of mapping out how you're going to do them. Now, I've already got this color scheme picked out, but you can kind of look at the model and start to put together what's going to be what and what's going to go where. Of course, your creativity is your own. You can do these however you want. What I'm going to do with this one is this main tunic here and up on the shirt. I'm going to do that in the cream color that I've been using, and even these sleeves here as well. I'm going to do these in that cream color as well. So this whole tunic portion is going to be green, or it's going to be the cream color. The pants I'm going to do, and it's almost like a camo green, and then the undershirt I'm going to do in the camo green as well. In my mind's eye, I don't know if that's how it is, but this is like a big onesie or something. The boots I'm going to do brown. The belts I'm going to do white, or it's going to be similar to a white, kind of like I did on my Ranger Hunters. And then this hood and these little bits that are flying are going to be my dark green. Normally I would do the cloaks in a dark green, but in this instance I'm going to do just those little bits green. The fur is going to be a brown. The cloth mask there that's covering his face is going to be a white, mostly for contrast purposes. I may decide to do it this dark green. We'll have to see. Obviously the skin color, and then we've got metal bits. There's really not a whole lot to this model, so it's pretty simple. He does have a bow on the back, so we're going to do a Weirwood white bow. Okay, so we're going to start. I've got Skeleton Horde. This is how I do my khaki. Previously I base coated it with a Ushabti bone, did a wash over it, went back over with highlights. The contrasts make this so much easier. So what we're going to do, since we've got these dry brushes, you're going to see after it dries and everything the contrast that it starts to create for you. It's really, really nice actually. So let's just go ahead and start doing some of this bone. And you're just really going to apply the contrasts. You can put it on there pretty thick. I don't think it really matters too much. Try not to get it into the parts that you don't want the bone color, but you're just gonna work these contrasts onto the cape, sort of like applying a wash. And you're going to do that across all of the tunic and all of the portions that you've decided that you're going to paint this color. Okay, so the khaki base coat's done. You can see that it's still a little bit wet, but you start to get an idea of why I really like the dry brushing. You can already see the contrast really starting to work. I think if you were just in the business of speed painting, you could probably just stop at this point with just the contrast that you did that dry brush and gave it a few different layers. I'll go back over it with some highlights and stuff, but if you're just trying to get a unit done quickly, then you could just call it done right there. But nonetheless, here we go. Now, the next color that we're going to use is Snakebite Leather Contrast. I told you that I'm doing the pants green, which I am, but I'm still going to go ahead and go over the pants with the Snakebite Leather, and then I'll go over top of it with the camouflage green color, and you'll see it kind of actually creates a really cool kind of color. And then you'll see when we get there, but that's another spot where you really don't have to highlight, but you can if you want, because the brown contrast working with the green really creates a neat color, and it gives you some impressive highlighting without actually highlighting. But regardless, we're going to go ahead and do the boots and the pant bottom in this Snakebite Leather color. And again, you're just going to kind of apply it generously. You don't want it to pull up too badly. It's going to create some kind of awkward spots where they're, same as using a wash. You don't want it to pull up and be way too dark for you to have to work with. You'll make the highlight step a little bit harder, but just kind of apply these. Got a little bit of a dry clump in there. But, yeah, just get it across the bits that you're going to do the green and the brown. Okay, so we've got the browns done. You can see that the bone color is mostly dry there. And again, you could really stop here if you wanted, like I said. One thing you could do if you wanted to add a little bit more contrast, but essentially be done, you could take like a flesh wash or a brown wash and wash only the recesses to give it a little bit of contrast. But again, I'm going to go over it and highlight it a little bit more. But I went ahead and I did the bits that I'm going to do gold. I covered those in Snakebite Leather as well, because the Snakebite Leather color really, really, really works well with gold. And I do the hilt in red, and it works well with red too. So if you want to get it done quickly, you can just Snakebite Leather, just do a red highlight, and I mean, no one would really be the wiser. So the last thing that I'm going to do here is the dark green. I choose Dark Angels Green. That's Dark Angels Green contrast. And I've just got to wash the hood and then these little bits that go to the side. No real need to record that. And then after that's done, we can start picking out some of the white bits that we'll just paint with a gray color and wash those later. But for the most part, the base coating is basically done, and we're not very long into this process at all. It's very, very quick process. Okay, the next thing, he's got a little bit of skin showing, so we've just got some Fire Slayer flesh. Any contrast flesh wash will work. So we're just going to do his face here. I switched to a smaller brush. And then while I was painting, I noticed on his back that we've got a little bit of a bow quiver sticking out here. I've been doing those as a flesh color on the Rangers, so we'll just go ahead and hit that really quick. And then from there, the only things that aren't at least base coated are going to be the metals, which we do last. I do last. And the whites on the bows, I'll do those last as well. But other than that, we've got the belts and the metal bits, and everything else is done. So I'm going to let this dry for a while, and then I'll come back. So my tunic is definitely dry. This here is a step that you don't have to do. You can see that it's kind of like a yellowish brown. I prefer my khaki color to have a little bit of red to it, so I just go ahead and go over the contrast with the Reekland Flesh Shade. This is the recipe that I used when I used just Ushabti bone as a base coat. You definitely don't want to do this super heavy because it will puddle up really badly. On some of my hunters, there were spots that it pulled up pretty badly, and I'm not going for that. I just want to give it a little bit of a reddish brownish tint, so I'm going to go ahead over the cloth here while it's drying, and I'm going to give it a little Reclin Flesh Shade wash. So just do that real quick. Go ahead. Okay, the model is pretty well dry at this point. So here I'm going over with the Castellan green. It's that camo colored green that I'm talking about. I'm going to go over the pants and the sleeves here with that color. And then once that dries, I'll show you what I was talking about with the bit where you maybe didn't have to highlight it if you really didn't want to. So just for reference, the models, the colors that I'm using are airbrush paints. So they're actually okay to take straight out of the bottle. You don't necessarily have to thin these. You still can. You can glaze them down if you want to, whatever you want to do, but they work straight out of the bottle. So I'm just going to do the pants and the sleeves, as I mentioned. Okay, so now the green, the Castellan green is on there. And here you can see a little bit of what I'm talking about because of the snakebite leather and the thinness of the paint. It actually kind of creates its own highlights. So again, if you're in a big hurry and you just want to get it knocked out, you could probably just stop right there at that point and be fine with it. If you painted the straps and the metal, realistically, you could call the model done if you just wanted to go, you know, with color on it to get it ready for the table, but we're gonna push this a little bit further. My next step, entirely up to you. I'm going to go over some of this stuff with Agrax Earthshade. It seems maybe a little bit weird to go with two types of washes, I guess, with contrast paint and the shades, but I really like it, especially on this fur, because it's really going to help me push that contrast. And I don't quite like the boots as they are with just the contrast on them. So we're just going to take this, we're going to wash the fur, the boots, and the gloves. While some of that other stuff dries, we're going to go ahead and start working this khaki color on the tunic or whatever. So what I'm going to do first is a very selective dry brush. Now this is one of those brushes I got cheap at Hobby Lobby, and this, I mean, it needs to be really selective because you don't want to really ruin this khaki color that we've done. So we're going to go over this, and then we'll do some line highlights on it. So we're just going to very select dry brush this, and you want to leave some of those shades that you've created in there, and just brush select parts of this. I don't know how well this camera's translating it, but it's just lightening this up ever so slightly. But you don't want to overwork this dry brush and start to create some of those nasty dry brush marks. So dry brush isn't necessarily a bad word. And I'm barely pressing this brush, and it's just kind of filming over this khaki. And this khaki is one of my favorite colors to work with, so I really want to be sure that I don't overwork it. Okay, so this was a really quick dry brush, but you can see, again, I don't know, my lighting at home sucks, but it did a lot to just kind of brighten that up. So then we'll go over it with our normal line highlights like we would normally. Go ahead. Okay, now we're gonna do the line highlights like we normally would, just picking out the very edges. We don't want a whole bunch of paint on here, but we do want a real crisp, clean line. My hands are shaking because I had a monster, but we're gonna do the best we can. So we're picking this line out right here, and then we're gonna go kind of around this edge like we normally would. We want this edge right here. And then we want to do this fold on the back and bring it down that edge. So this whole section is now done. On this tunic that's poking out right here, we're going to basically almost just kind of go back over it and paint it. just leave the very inside edges. So now that bit's done. On the inside here where we have some folds, we're essentially just gonna paint this curve and these lines. So again, we're just gonna dab the brush in. Just go right in through here. Very, very gently pressing. Then we're working our way around some folds. Just hit those lines real quick. The back side of that one. Now we're making our way around to the front. And here, we're just gonna grab these lines right here real quick. These lines here, and here, here, and there. Grab that line there, and then we're just gonna kind of dab a little bit on those spots and dab a little bit on the back side. Now we wanna get this seam right here. So we're gonna go ahead and highlight that one. That's done. And then we're gonna get this line, do a little touch there, this big fold, that big fold. Then I think that's for a clasp that's holding on our robe. So we've got a line right here that we're gonna hit. Got it? Do this edge, bring a line down here. Just dot that right there. Grab this fold, hit these little folds. Then we've got another nice little line here. This is a beautiful model, by the way. Okay, and then in here we've got some folds and we can see those lines. So we're gonna go just over those lines. Then we've got a bigger fold right here. A fold right there. Then we're gonna go down this line here in the front. Do a little bit down here where it starts to meet the boot. Bring this one up where you'll be able to see. And you can feather that one out a little bit if you want to. And then we've just got a couple more lines. We're gonna do this one here. That one there. The bottom bit. A fold there. That area. Then just a couple little dabs, and I think that's probably good for the khaki. So just go look at that real quick and see what that's gonna look like. So again, it's subtle, but we've got some nice highlights going on. My camera woman zooming in real far. But you can see we've got some nice crisp lines there. And when you look from a distance, forgive my lighting, it looks pretty nice, and those little subtle shades are nice. Now we're gonna do the fur on the back. And for this one, I want that fur to be different from the gloves. So I've gone with Baylor brown. It's kind of like a yellowish, ugly brown. But with this one, we're gonna do a little bit of some lazy highlights here. This one's essentially just you're gonna load up the brush, and then we're really just gonna be dabbing. I'm not gonna go through all of these lines. We just want some of this fur to pop out, so from a distance it looks like fur. So we're just literally gonna boop, 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 and we're just basically dabbing some of this. And we want this to be pretty thick because we want this to be somewhat of a bold. Otherwise it's just gonna blend in with the contrast paint that we've used, and you won't really be able to see that there's a highlight there. So you'll see that I'm really wetting my brush up a lot, but we're just gonna go across the fur and basically just do these little dabs. Okay, so that fur's done. We've brightened it up quite a bit. So next we'll just move on to these gold bits. And again, thanks to the contrast paint working so well as a base for gold, because normally you wash gold with brown. So the contrast, if you just base coat it with a contrast, it's essentially done that for you, and then you can just highlight. So I'm using my small brush here, and I'm taking true metallic gold, and I'm just gonna do the outer line, and you can see it there. And I mean, that's how fast it is. I mean, that's gonna work for the table, because the brown, we've still got a nice transition there to the glove, and just with one really quick step and a simple highlight, that's how we'll do our gold. And then I'll do it on the dagger and on the end of the hilt as well.
Good.
Okay, so you can see here the golds are done on the dagger, and I've got the clasp done there for the cloak. So the next thing we'll do, this is gonna be super simple because there's very little of it. We'll just do some skin. So we've already contrasted what little bit of the face that you can see, and this is just gonna be very quick. We're just gonna do a little bit on the eyebrows there, and a little bit in the middle of the forehead, and that's good enough. And then on the back here for the quiver, we're just gonna go along these two lines here that you see. There and there, done. And then on the bottom side of the quiver, you can kind of just give it a little bit of a dab. That's it. Okay, we're gonna highlight the camo green with this pukey green. Now, with this color, you don't wanna go crazy with it because it's a really, I don't know if it's the right color to highlight it, but it works okay. So we're just gonna do some real small lines here on the folds just like before. Just on the edges. Since these pants have some nice folds, I'm actually probably not gonna mess with trying to do a highlight on the knee. I mean, I could, but I don't think it's totally necessary here because the contrast has really done a nice job for us. So there's that pant leg. Realistically, on the back, we really don't need to do anything, but if you're OCD like I am with minis, you can get down here and do this bit on the back side. And then we'll just do the face mask. So again, with this one, it's gonna be kind of painting over those parts. So we'll go around the edge there and kind of dab on the mask. And that's good. And then on the sleeves again, we'll just go right along these folds that we have here. Very gently. That's my youngest in the background. And again, that brown with the light coat of the green really did the heavy lifting on these green bits. On the camo green parts, we really probably didn't even necessarily have to do a highlight, so we're just gonna do a real light one just on some of the folds. Okay, good. Okay, now with the dark greens on the cloak, we're gonna do a dry brush again. And this is gonna be another kind of select dry brush, but I've chosen War Boss green. It's the green that I've always used to highlight my green cloaks. So with this one, we're kind of just trying to get in the middle and just kind of lighten that green up just a little bit. So I did that one. Get this one under here. And then on the hood bit, we just really wanna add a little bit of, some lighter green to this dark. And we want to leave some of the recesses, but I'm being careful here not to go over the parts that we've already highlighted. So just doing that. Get the back. And then we've just got these little bits here. To just brighten it a little bit, and then we'll go over it with a standard highlight. So we're not going to record that process, but I'm just going to line highlight around the front, that fold there, and then we'll edge highlight these little straps and give them some nice contrast there. Okay, now really all that's left on this at this point, besides the bows and the blades, or and the straps as well, the white bits, we've just got to do the leather or the boots. And again, you can see the boots, they're not even bad. Like, you could pretty well call that done, and I don't think anybody would argue with you. I'm just going to go over and add a little bit more to it over that fold. Lighten that up just a little bit in there. Lighten this part up. It'll just make it pop a little bit more. But again, with the contrast paint and the wash, I don't even think that this is really necessary. You can definitely just call it. Okay, so again with the hilt, we washed it with snakebite leather, which I think is smart because the brown is a nice shading for the red. So all we really have to do here is I'm going to take my fine brush and we're just going to go along the hilt and just literally draw some lines or dots to give it the appearance like it's a red blade. Super simple. You don't even have to really go all the way around. There it is, that should be enough.